Hey, how's it going, everybody? And welcome into another episode of Mock Draft Monday here on the SFS channel. No intro today. We're diving straight into things, but I do have one major announcement before we kick off the draft here. I have finally completed my August rankings and draft guide profiles for the 2021 fantasy football season. I've been pouring everything I've got into this draft guide for the past 2 months here, spending hours a day in June and July, making all of these rankings, setting my positional rankings, and ultimately putting that big board together for you all. So I finished things off with about an 8 to 10 hour day of work. I took a couple breaks, but spent basically the entire weekend working on that stuff so I could finish that and put it out for you here at the top of the month for prime time draft season, and I'll be updating those rankings weekly. So again, we've got positional rankings and big board rankings, so if you want to check that out, that'd be super awesome, and I'd love to see what you guys think of that collection. On top of those rankings, I've got the top sleepers, busts, must-draft players for this season, and in-depth draft guide profiles for every one of those top 250 players, where I talk about their ceilings, their floors, and I assess their risk for this fantasy football season. So I've got everything from the biggest names to the deepest sleepers this season. Again, love if you would all check that out, and it would mean a lot to me. So here we go. It's time to jump into the draft today and get this thing kicked off. Today, as always, we are drafting with members of the free Discord community. As you see up on your screen, you can take advantage of that by popping down in the description of today's video and joining that free link. So if you'd like to be featured in the next episode of this, which typically is a Saturday video, but another announcement I had to make is this week, and this week only potentially, I will be putting out a mock draft a day here on the channel in addition to the content I have been putting out on a regular basis as well. So 7 mock drafts this week opposed to the 2 that we normally do. But you see here, we've only got 1 open spot left on the draft board, and I only gave the boys about a 3-hour notice here today before shooting out this invite link, and we're missing our man Jokester here, who is celebrating his anniversary today, so can't be with us. That would have filled out that 12th spot. So hop in there. It's first come, first serve. We'd love to see you guys hopping in and out of here each and every week and get you involved for some awesome fantasy content here this offseason as we prepare for the NFL year. So I started out today at the 1.1 overall pick, kicking off the draft board. I took Christian McCaffrey in a half PPR league. That is the setting in today's video. It makes a lot of sense. You know, you can go back and forth, I think, between him and Dalvin Cook, but I've had a bit of a change of heart recently. Cook was my safer option at the position and tended to be the player I'd pick on a more frequent basis here. But when I reevaluated my rankings, checked out what I thought about the upside when comparing the 2 players to one another, I think that McCaffrey's upside is a touch better. So regardless of which guy you pick, you're taking risk by investing it all into the top player on the board there. So I think at the end of the day, you might as well shoot for the stars and take the player at the highest ceiling. And that's what McCaffrey certainly has, as a player who can finish as a 2,000 yard scrimmage, 2,000 yards from scrimmage back because of the damage he can do in the receiving and rushing game. So taking a peek at the other picks being made on the board here, Dalvin Cook goes at the 1-2, Derrick Henry at the 1-3, followed up quickly by Alvin Kamara and Ezekiel Elliott. That is actually, with the exception of that Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry swap, I would flip them the other 2 ways. That's how I have my draft guide rankings put together at this current moment in time. If you're interested in that draft guide, of course, go check that out once again. But I will be putting out my top 24 running backs and wide receivers on Tuesday and Wednesday here this week. So if you're watching this video on Monday, tomorrow you'll get the running backs, and Wednesday you'll get the receivers. But if you're watching this video after Monday, August 2nd, you can just pop over onto my channel, and those videos will already be up and posted for you, in addition to those 2 other mock drafts that I'll be posting again every single day this week. So Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, the 2 picks that went here at the 1-8 and 1-9 overall draft spots. The 2 first wideouts off the board here, Nick Chubb at the 110. And I guess while I've got the chance here, we do have a lot of user picks, so this draft might take a bit longer than usual, but I want to give people at least the time to make the proper draft picks. And I see I accidentally flipped the weather onto the screen there. I apologize about that. All right, so in an ideal world, we would have a quality running back fall back to us, but there is a lot of picks in between my 212 selection and the players who have yet to make their second-round draft choices. So Jay Kovacs is currently not in the draft lobby. Hopefully he can pop in here before that draft clock expires, but it does not matter if he's not in here because he'll just go on auto until he can come back in here into the lobby. But realistically, we might be able to get an Antonio Gibson, a Najee Harris back there. If there's a receiver run in the second round, that would be awesome. Maybe J.K. Dobbins will be the best running back left on the board based off my ranking sheet. Let's see, if we went to the wide receiver position, there will certainly be names there. I have no doubt about it. Another thing that might end up playing out here is Darren Waller might be my favorite option available on the board if a lot of those running backs and wideouts that I like are taken here. So one thing I will not be doing is investing into a Pat Mahomes, investing into one of these receivers that I see more as a third-round name. I need to make sure that I'm assessing this draft board properly and not making any wild reaches here while we are trying to construct this team in the first few rounds. Because while the team that drafts first overall is the fantasy team and draft position that statistically wins the most league championships, it's also the position that I would say you can most easily set yourself up for failure or lose the draft very early on with making the wrong picks. We saw this last year. Probably not too many teams last season, as opposed to the average year, won from that 1.1 draft spot, because when Christian McCaffrey, who was pretty much the fantasy consensus RB1 and player 1 overall, was hurt for all but 4 games. I think it was only 3 games last season. That's not enough production. It wasn't during the playoffs either that he was playing those games. So you were looking at a very big hole in your roster, and the rest of your draft would have had to be pretty darn good to keep you in contention out of that spot. There was a lot of McCaffrey wheeling and dealing going on last season, and it really didn't work out for any side unless you were the one dumping McCaffrey to another team. So I actually was trying to make a move for Christian McCaffrey in a league last season, and he got sniped from me from another team for an offer that I thought was hot trash. But nonetheless, I am very thankful that my offer did not go through for McCaffrey, because I would have gotten burned there, and I ended up flipping the same package that I was offering for McCaffrey to get Kamara down the stretch of last season. So I would say that worked out a lot better in my favor there. So the 2 picks, we're still waiting for that second round to really get rolling here. We'll take a look at some more players, some more options on the draft board. Again, if you want to take part in next week's mock draft, or I guess Saturday will probably be the first time that I have the subscribers in the Discord community back in here for that episode, you got to join that down in the description of today's video. The rest of the week, since there's so many mocks, I'm not going to try and get all these guys in here, because these episodes tend to take a bit longer when we're waiting on other people to make picks and stuff like that. So we'll try to keep these videos being as efficient as possible. And the main focus, the main value I think that we can take from fantasy mock drafts is just hearing the content and listening to the advice being given in the videos. Because, again, while, I mean, every fantasy mock draft essentially is different. You're not going to see one or the other that has the same picks being made. Maybe there's a trend, maybe a certain fantasy analyst that you like to watch makes relatively similar draft picks every time on the board. But at the end of the day, not all of the same players are going to be on the table to be drafted every time. So you're going to have to watch different things, be able to listen to different scenarios play out, and see how the board swings each time. So my goal, I always try and switch up the draft positions, that I start from, as obviously I want to be drafting different players for you all. And then hopefully different sleepers, different must-own players in various rounds pop up for me, and I can end up starting to take advantage of some of the stuff going on here. So if you guys are new around here and you are enjoying today's video so far, you should head down and click that subscribe button. We want to grow this community as quick as possible and make this the most interactive fantasy football channel out there. If you've got any questions about your fantasy leagues this season, your drafts coming up, by all means, pop those down in the comment section of today's video or any video whenever you see one come out and something arises. You guys can also get a hold of me in that Discord channel and drop your questions in there. We're setting up fantasy leagues, getting some subscriber leagues going, and just getting a bunch of awesome stuff put together. I'm trying to get an SFS Dynasty League started up here within the next, if it doesn't happen this season, we'll for sure get that going next year. So there's a lot of fun stuff coming your way in the near future with the SFS channel here. So it's almost our draft pick. Gibson, unfortunately, not in play for us, but it does look like Najee Harris is still there, although he is the top running back available. I would probably be shocked if he made it to me. Yep, there he goes at the 210. Almost my draft spot here. J.K. Dobbins, my next best name up on the board. Looks like he might be my pick here, and I could go back-to-back, put him with Darren Waller, and I'd feel pretty good about the upside I've got at the running back spot if I could make those two picks. But I'll be quite disappointed. And there we go. So JK fell to me. Boom, J.K. Dobbins there at the 212. He is my RB13 right now for this fantasy season. Just barely fell out of my RB1 rankings. I've been going back and forth between him and Antonio Gibson for that 12th running back spot. Gibson actually just slid in there with the Cam Akers injury. But at the end of the day, I think Gibby can just get some more volume for us. And I think that the receiving game that he possesses and the utilization he has in that role with the Washington football team is very, very impressive. So I think that's something that we can't take too lightly. Dobbins' game is more built around efficiency and explosive carries, whereas he might not be getting 20-25 touch performances. We might be happy with 16 to 18 and him averaging 6 yards a touch on those carries. That's kind of what Alvin Kamara did for the Saints last year and has been doing throughout his career. That happens a little bit more because he's used as a receiver and catches passes in space, which opens up the opportunity for him to be incredibly efficient. But Dobbins is just that explosive of a player that between the tackles, he can still make that happen. So, Kamara had a lot of help too in the touchdown department that fueled his RB1 finish last year, but he has shown us and is living proof that you don't need ridiculous volume as long as the talent is there. Alvin Kamara didn't average even 19 touches per game last fantasy season. I want to say it was 18.2 or 18.7 touches per game. It was somewhere between that marker. But he was a very lightly used and is one of the cleanest fantasy running backs, the elite upside, just because of that efficient play. And I definitely think J.K. Dobbins has that potential as well. Both guys kind of have a similar situation. And by no means am I saying here that J.K. Dobbins will be a top 5 fantasy running back this season, but he absolutely could be because, again, that upside is there. But both players have kind of a touchdown vulture in their backfield as well. Notably, the Saints actually just picked up Devontae Freeman off the waiver wires here. The Saints are making some moves, signing a bunch of free agent vets right now, but Gus Edwards is kind of that guy for the Ravens where he just comes in there, snatches up some touchdowns, isn't a very efficient runner at all, and is not explosive or fast whatsoever. I talked about this. I forget what video it was. It was probably my last mock draft, but he ran one of the slowest 40-yard dashes of any of the running backs in the relevance of a fantasy lens here. And then that pick I made there at the 3-1, I want to keep this thing chugging along for you guys, making quick picks here and breaking my selections down as we wait for the other picks to go off the board. Darren Waller is my tight end too this fantasy season. I'll take him over George Kittle any day of the week. He's got more targets in his offense. He actually had, I paced it out. George Kittle only played 8 games last season, but it's very easy to pace out what his numbers could have looked like if he played all 16 because, 16 divided by 8, you just got to multiply his numbers by 2. Kittle was hovering around the high 120s in the targets department, and Darren Waller was getting up there in the 140s. So, and he was actually healthy for dang near the whole season. So, and then you talk about the touchdown side of things. I think that George Kittle, while he might be a better all-around tight end, a better tight end in the NFL, he's a dominant run blocker. Darren Waller scores more touchdowns. He has less barriers to entry in terms of the receiving threats around him are not as significant as I believe they are in San Francisco. Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are a very good 1-2 punch. So you're not just getting freebie targets. Like, those things have got to be earned. And both of these offenses are fairly run-first teams. But what it comes down to at the very end of the day is that I just think that Waller's floor is safer. He's shown us that he can stay healthier. And again, that touchdown production and the volume is better for him there. So coming back now, we could look at running back one more time. I'm not all that locked in on drafting Darrell Henderson if he was available, but that is a quality draft pick at this point in time. I think wide receiver is probably the more pressing need at this stage of the draft here, heading into the early 5th round, though. The value isn't all that great, to be completely honest here, but there are some names I would like to take advantage of. Namely, I think a Tyler Lockett would be a stud to get here, although it is a bit early for him. I don't know how great I'd feel about that pick. Amari Cooper, I'd feel very good about. He barely cracks my wide receiver 1 rankings as my wide receiver 12. He got kicked up into that group following the Michael Thomas injury news with that 12 to 16 week recovery time. So had that not been the case, Cooper would be a high-end wide receiver 2 for me. But simply the next man up here. So another guy that saw a big boost from that was actually Traquan Smith, who he's kind of rising up my rankings right now as well as a fantasy sleeper. So is Adam Troutman. The Saints are going to have to throw the ball to somebody, and I'd say those are the 2 next best options after Alvin Kamara out of the backfield. So Cooper would be awesome, but there's 4 picks left here, so I'd be really shocked if he makes it back to me. He is on the PUP recovering from an ankle/foot injury that he sustained at the end of last season. Wow, maybe he will reach me. Only 2 spots left here. But the Cowboys claim they're not concerned about it. They don't think it's a big worry, but I don't know. I think that him and Ceedee Lamb are going to be pretty darn even in terms of the fantasy output they see this season. So, man, Cooper really might follow me here. Let's pop him up on the screen here. My luck, he'll get drafted here at the 411. And, yeah, there you see it. Jerry Jones is anticipating that Amari Cooper and DeMarcus Lawrence, who are their 2 big-name guys that are injured right now, will be returning to practice and make it back to the field after their preseason game. So Amari Cooper fell to me. I'll take my next best wide receiver out the board. He is my wide receiver 12, as I stated, at this moment in time. It's not something I'm all that bullish about right now, but I do think it is something worth making as a draft choice here. So I'm just trying to take a look at the board here and see what the next best selection for me might be. Kyler Murray is kind of the value pick right now. I could set myself at a small positional advantage there by taking him here. He is a player who should have went in the 4th round. I'm kind of shocked he didn't go there. And I don't love to see Kyle Pitts going there as the tight end 4. I just do not like that draft pick this season. Yeah, we saw Darrell Henderson go off the board, so the running back group is looking pretty thin. I'm glad I addressed that spot when I did, because I'm not loving the names too much here. I might just pair him with Tyler Lockett here. I think that might be the upside play to go with, because I think that I could have a shot and at least a swing at, depending on how far they get faded, Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. You know, they might be a step down from Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, but I think they're right in the mix of things here. So I'm going to take Tyler Lockett here at this spot. See what happens here in the rest of this round. Again, quarterback was not really a position I was all that worried about drafting here or concerned with making as my draft pick. Let's see here. Not too many running backs left on the board, so I think that's something that we could look into here in the later stages of the draft. Maybe try and pick up a Trey Sermon, a Michael Carter, some of these higher upside young players that give us the chance to win games down the stretch of the season when, A lot of other veteran running backs, they're slowing down. Their production is dropping. We saw this happen with a lot of players last year. You look at a Todd Gurley who started the year off on fire with the touchdowns, but once those kind of winded down, came to a halt, he was virtually useless in fantasy lineups. And then you saw the younger players, the Jonathan Taylors, the David Montgomerys, stepping up and winning leagues last year because of the games they were having down the stretch. So there's a lot of interesting ways to attack that position down the back half of boards. And there goes Kyler Murray. I figured it was coming here relatively quickly because that was kind of the no-brainer draft choice. Yeah, that's a pick I like to see there. And I think that team is coming together really nicely. They got a really, really strong top 3 running back core. Justin Jefferson in the early 3rd as your receiver 1. Can't go wrong there. And then getting Kyler to top off that group there. I like what this team is doing here at the 1-4 as well, getting yourself Alvin Kamara and Chris Carson. Those are 2 very quality running backs, and Calvin Ridley is absolutely a top 5 fantasy receiver this season with Robert Woods, who is a very, very solid number 2. Him and Cooper Kupp, they always seem to go right next to one another. There they go at the 4-8 and the 4-9. Not too big of a fan. I'm not a CEH guy, so that's ultimately the only pick I don't like for Willie Wallace here in the first 4 rounds, heading into his 5th draft spot here. But I love the Zeke pick at the 1-5. He's soaring up pretty much everyone's boards right now, and kind of just the more I think about him, the more the situation seems advantageous. This is only half PPR, so Clyde, I don't like his floor as much as I would in full PPR, but nonetheless, I don't really think that Pat Mahomes wants to check the ball down to the running backs. He's trying to push the ball downfield and make plays happen in that area of the field. So for a player that's not getting goal line touches, for a player that's not going to be used on all rushing downs because he doesn't have the frame to be used in short yardage situations because he doesn't have the power to move defenders out of the way, I'm sorry, I just don't like that situation and way to go about things this year. Huddy here at the 1-6 goes Barkley and Gibson. That is a running back duo I would really like to see. If this pick here is running back for Huddy, that'd be nice. Lamar Jackson, you can't go wrong with that either. Let's check out. You know what? Honestly, with Kareem Hunt and Travis Etienne being the next 2 names up on the board, Lamar Jackson was the right pick there. I think that duo is going to finish the season very, very strong if they're healthy and ready to go. The only thing I worry about, and I just drafted Saquon Barkley with the 9th overall pick in a league that is a real money league. The thing that was concerning to me and that I was really trying to address in the middle and late rounds of the draft was making sure I was the first to pick up those high upside rookies or find a vet that can start for me in the event that Barkley is out the first 2 games or so. With that ACL, I've got an awesome video out about how I think Saquon Barkley is a league winner this season, and I absolutely still think that's the case. I think his upside is phenomenal. I think that he has the chance to finish as a top 3 running back, even if he misses a few games, and if he plays all of them, I think he could finish as the RB1 still. But we still don't want to drop those first 2 games because we're so bad at running back because we didn't make sure we had the depth we needed in the first couple rounds there. So as long as he addresses that throughout some point here on the rest of the board, he should be fine. I'm interested in what the team here has going on at the 1.8 draft position, starting out with 2 really, really strong receiver options. Actually, my wide receiver number 1 and wide receiver 4 off the board, Hopkins and Adams, kind of solidifying a top-heavy unit there. Josh Jacobs is not a running back I'm that high on, and he's either my RB20 or my RB21. I'd have to check my ranking sheet, and that'll be out tomorrow, so you can go check that out. But his upside's not amazing. But I do think that for the upside he has at the wide receiver spots, he can at least hold down the fort for you. And I think that maybe Xavier Jones needs to be in play for that team with picking Darrell Henderson to be your RB2, just because Henderson has had some lingering injury concerns and has been dinged up and off the field in his early NFL career. So you just want to add an insurance policy there. It's a fantastic RB2 to have. If he stays healthy, you just want to make sure you cover your bases here with these more risky players who tend to get dinged up a bit more. And Russ Wilson's still in play. Here's my last quarterback that I talked about before that bend ended there earlier on. So we'll see what ends up happening here. But then Travis Etienne, I personally don't like drafting Travis Etienne because I think his ADP is a bit high. But the Discord members here today didn't really pick him as high as he typically goes. So I don't mind that spot there at the 5.8 at all. And when I talked about having limited upside with these first 2 running back picks, he kind of compensates for that because I think that while his floor is very low, the ceiling is quite high. So I'm really liking this interesting draft approach that we've got here from this 1.8 position. And then Deontay Johnson is a very, very strong receiver 3 option. And if you're deploying him into your flex, I don't know. This team's doing a pretty good job of attacking the board in a method that you don't typically see here. So the auto draft has really, really screwed Jay Kovacs over here at the 111 spot. Holy cow. He has 5 receivers and Josh Allen. I think we've got 2 flexes in here today. Yep, 2 flex leagues. So he'll be mopping the floor once Diggs, Metcalf, Michael Thomas, and Kenny G are potentially all available, deploying those 4 options into your starting lineup, along with having a top 3 fantasy quarterback. But, I mean, their running back room is going to be hurting. That's all I got to say about that. They better go back-to-back, maybe even like 4 straight picks here. They need to get some of those elite rookies. If they could stay in the mix for long enough this season, if this was a real league, and you picked a Trey Sermon and a Michael Carter for this team, you could have insane upside down the stretch of the year. You just got to make sure you win those games in the short term. I don't know. I don't like the RB0 strategy, and it's really risky. They might not get any of those players because they might go in this range right here. But if somehow you could pull that off, you never know. It looks like Russ Wilson made it to me back here on the board. I could stack him with Tyler Lockett at this 6-12 draft position here. I would not mind that pick at all. We'll actually go with that here. Reset the clock. Again, trying to keep this draft board moving. I don't know. I kind of like going Rojo here. Raheem Mostert's got a heck of a lot of upside, but Trey Sermon, I was just talking him up. I'm not so sure I want to invest into a player who I expect to be overtaken at the back stretch of the season. I've already got my tight end. Could go Courtland Sutton here. I do like that draft pick. Think that as my wide receiver 3, he does have a lot of upside. So I don't know. I think this is the second mock draft in 3 videos here that I've taken Courtland Sutton, but we'll take a chance here. And again, obviously this is just a mock draft, so I'm not actually going to be playing with this team, but there's the potential to have wide receiver 1 weeks out of all 3 of those fantasy receivers I just took, and I didn't draft one until the 4th round. So that kind of shows you the depth at the position. I mean, look at that team there at the 111. I mean, you've got 5 receivers who can put up wide receiver 1 weeks. Chase Claypool did it last year. Kenny G has done it before in his career, and then nobody will argue that MT, DK Metcalf, or Stephon Diggs can't do it because they're all top 12 players if they play the entire season. So, and Diggs is my wide receiver 2. You've got my wide receiver 2, my wideout number 6, and then MT got shuffled around a little bit, and his numbers are a bit skewed because of that injury, but if he was playing, he was a top 12 receiver for me. So 3 straight Broncos off the board here. That's interesting. Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and Melvin Gordon there in the early 7th round. The starting lineup is pretty much filled out here. Do not roster fill. That is a piece of advice I have for those of you watching today. Roster filling means bad value picks. If you're just reaching on players, taking the best available at different positions to try and fill out that starting lineup, that's a no-no. Don't do that. Make sure you're getting the proper assets that help you at their spots in the draft. In my top 250 player rankings, I have there's dang near 100, and this is worth noting here too. I do not include kickers or defenses in the top 250 player rankings, but I do have rankings separate for those players. The reasoning for that is that there's so many different league styles out there, so many different league formats. I didn't want to mix them in because there's going to be a lot of teams, a lot of leagues that don't have those even as a part of their fantasy leagues. So for those of you that have them, here's my advice to you, and we'll touch on this a little bit later in the video when it comes time to pick those 2 spots for today's video. And we actually don't have kickers in today's mock draft, but in terms of defense, Don't pick defenses. Defenses, I would argue, are much more important than kickers, but do not start taking them until the last 2 rounds of your draft. I don't care how many rounds it is. I don't care how many teams are on your league. Don't take them until the last 2 rounds of your drafts. There's one exception here, and maybe if you have a 25-team league, one of your league mates in round 18, 19, 20, whatever it is, you should not be the person to start this. But if somebody else in your league starts a run on defenses or kickers, then you can partake in that. And you don't have to partake in it, and I'm not going to tell you that you have to or that you should, but I would say it's a viable excuse to do so. If you're right at the early stage of that run and you can pick up one of the top options at that position, do it. But if you're already at the back end of the run on the position, capitalize on the value that they left for you by taking all of those players. You get what I'm saying here? So if 8 straight defenses go off your board, somebody that was supposed to be drafted at an actual fantasy position in those 8 spots now just fell back to you, and you got a better player than you were supposed to because the rest of your league mates jumped the gun on a defense or a kicker. So there's a time and a place to draft them for sure. Again, defenses are more important than kickers, more difficult to find. You can pick up and drop and add new kickers on a week-to-week basis. You can do the same thing with defenses, don't get me wrong. But there are certainly elite fantasy defenses, and there's a couple kickers that give you weekly double-digit points. But those are hard to come by here. So name I actually like at the kicker spot this year is Will Lutz, because while the Saints were typically, that's the right word choice here, scoring touchdowns frequently on their drives with Drew Brees under center, I think they'll still move the ball, but there'll be a regression of them actually finishing off and capping off those drives with TDs. Will Lutz is going to come in there and kick a lot of 30, 40-yard field goals this season. So I think that you've got a good enough offense to get them into scoring range. A very good kicker, big leg, accurate. He should be able to punch a lot of field goals home for fantasy lineups this season. Defenses here, we'll get back into that stuff again at the later stages of this draft. Yikes, David Johnson is that team's RB1. That is just depressing. All right, let's take a peek at my team here, see what we can be picking here. We've only got 5 spots on the board until my next spot here. Brandon Cooks would be a nice name to fill out some more depth at the wide receiver position. Man, my top 2 backs are really nice, but the rest of that group is very thin. This is why you got to pick those running backs up early. I mean, the value is almost all gone. I might take Leonard Fournette if he falls to me here, because although I think that he's an average running back 2 at best, he's the guy that's got the most carved out role in this offense left on the table. So I think we got to capitalize on that. Let's take a look at the ADP here on the big board. Yeah, Gus Edwards has a long time before he's supposed to go. I might just not fade, but I'm going to take a chance, roll the dice here. I would love to handcuff J.K. Dobbins with Gus Edwards, but I don't want to do it just yet. So I'm going to wait until my next pick on the bend, and I'm going to gamble that either Chuba Hubbard or Gus Edwards will be there for me, and I'll be able to take advantage of one of those players. So this should play out in my favor one way or another. It might not work perfectly, but we're going to get one of those 2 players, I would imagine, here at this next spot. And then I feel a bit better because my receiver core is looking like it's going to play out fairly strong here. So in the event that I get what I want here, we should be looking good. So if Leonard Fournette could just survive 3 picks for us, 3 picks. Come on, playoff Lenny. Also, what is the deal with Leonard Fournette in the playoffs? Like, this man is literally, looks like he just walked off the streets and is like your average Joe for the 16 games to make it to the postseason, and then he gets to the playoffs and looks like prime Zeke out here running over defenders, breaking open tackles in the open space, and I mean, he is night and day, a completely different player. And conversely, Rojo was a beast in the regular season, a 98-yard touchdown run. I wish Rojo, I've said this a lot last season. I haven't really been saying it that much this offseason because I'm not talking about the Bucs backfield as much as I think I should be. I think Rojo's a top 12 fantasy running back if, hear me out here, he's not a top 12 running back in my rankings. I should have slowed down and reworded that. If they gave him workhorse touches and workhorse volume, he is 100% a top 12 running back. With the talent he has, the ferocity he runs the ball with, and there we go, Lenny fell to us, so we're going to take that here. My point being is that if Leonard Fournette was not a factor in this backfield and Ronald Jones was a player that was getting competent carries and getting us the volume he needs to succeed, he'd be a top 12 back. Maybe a low-end back, maybe a low-end RB1, but he'd be in that conversation. So we got lucky here. We lucked out with Leonard Fournette falling to us. This video, we're tending to not get sniped. We were getting sniped hardcore the last 2 mocks that we were doing here. All the players I wanted were just streaking off the board. I really like Curtis Samuel, but I'm going to take Brandon Cooks over him here. I think that the target share is just going to be really good in Houston. They just picked up Anthony Miller, but he's going to play out of the slot. Poor Kiki QT just can't earn that starting role. I had actually just made his player profile for the draft guide, and I was talking him up. You know, Randall Cobb got traded out of town, and then I remembered they trade for Anthony Miller, and he's going to start in the slot, isn't he? And I go over, look at their depth chart. Sure enough, Kiki QT is already bumped down to the wide receiver 4 spot on that roster, and he probably hasn't even played a snap with Anthony Miller yet in practice. So depressing news for Kiki QT supporters out there, but nonetheless, he should be a quality wide receiver 4 option. They've got all dinky little players. I mean, Cooks gets banged around by safeties even. I said this a couple of videos back, he got clocked by Malcolm Jenkins in the Super Bowl a couple seasons ago. Anthony Miller gets hurt every once in a while, and then Nico Collins is actually the wide receiver 2 right now. That's a name. If you want to hear a name, a sleeper, Nico Collins. Go check him out from Michigan. He's a rookie. I think he's a 5th round pick, maybe 4th round, 5th round pick. The dude's going to start, and he could take over the wide receiver 1 role. Kind of contradicting my pick of Brandon Cooks here, but Brandon Cooks has very, very promising track records from the past, 1,000-yard seasons with like 3 or 4 teams, so not worried about that pick at all. And he was the number 2 wide receiver to Will Fuller in this offense last season and finished as a high-end wide receiver 2. So 119 targets, I'm not concerned about Cooks at all this season. And he's done it with the Saints, the Pats, the Rams, now the Texans. It's looking like this guy is going to be the best journeyman receiver of our 2010s generation here, I guess. I mean, I guess now we're playing in the 2020s, but Cooks started out in 2000. I think he's been in the league for like 7 years. Let's see. Player card time. Pull it up. Yep, 7 seasons. So what is that? 2014 season. He was a rookie for the Saints. 2013. What is this man doing out here in 2013? Okay, nope, he was a rookie in 2014 because he has no stats, and I know he didn't have a season-long injury, so that's pretty impressive, though. Jeez. Only 27 years old, so he came in as a youngin' too. It feels like he's been around forever, and I mean, 7 years is a long time, so he used to be one of the fastest. He might still be a very fast player, but, well, he is still a very fast player, but probably not as extremely fast as he was once perceived. He was like I remember he was like the speedster when I started playing fantasy football. That was like his calling card, was that Brandon Cooks was the deep threat for Drew Brees. And he was good in that role, but he's a bit more of a polished player now in his veteran days here. Lots of quarterbacks and tight ends going off here in the 10th round. Joe Burrow, who is a QB1 for me. Ryan Tannehill's a QB1 in my book. I actually have Matt Stafford ranked just behind those 2 players, and then Trevor Lawrence behind him. But other than that, pretty much following my rankings order here. Not a big Gesicki, Tanyan, or Logan Thomas fan in fantasy this season. I personally believe that if you are drafting a fantasy tight end in the top 5 rounds, if you're picking, basically the cutoff is Kyle Pitts here. And actually, I'll say the cutoff is TJ Hawkinson because my rankings are different than ADP. So ADP's lowest would be TJ Hawkinson. I believe he's going like as a mid to late 5th round pick. Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, Darren Waller, George Kittle, Travis Kelce. If you're picking a tight end that is among that list of players, don't draft another tight end. Don't bother getting a reserve tight end for your fantasy roster. And if you're not picking one of those players, fade the position completely. Do not. This is where it goes back to don't roster fill. There's no point in drafting a tight end. They're all the same after that. yeah, sure, maybe Dallas Goedert has some more involvement in his offense, but he's got Zach Ertz still there. He hasn't left yet. Noah Fant can't stay healthy. A ton of risks in his game. There's a lot of targets in the Denver offense and terrible quarterback play, not to mention. So there's no promises. There's no guarantees with any of these other players. You might as well invest into safer options at other positions and strengthen your team in that facet of the draft here and worry about those other spots later. So, my man, Gus Edwards went off the board. Let's see, how far of a reach is... Oh, gosh, Chuba Hubbard isn't even in the vicinity of this pick. Or did he already go? I might have missed him. Is his ADP just a lot lower? Oh, 162. And okay, so I can wait even another round. He's probably gonna get drafted. I'm gonna be a little disappointed if that happens, but take a chance. We'll take a chance here. Fill out some other spots of need. Some sleeper receivers that I've got tagged here on the board still available. I like these options. 10th round pick. I need to hurry up here. We're running out of time. It could be Tony Pollard time. I would not mind that pick. He is a running back who I actually expect to have some involvement for his team this year. We'll do that before we run out of time here. Tony Pollard is going to be my first pick of the two. Justin Fields could be a quality QB option as well. Nah. Yes, he is a quality QB option, but I don't like the fact that Matt Ryan is still on the table, but I don't really want to pair Matt Ryan with let Russ cook here. I don't know. I could just dip into two running backs that I think have some standalone value. That could be the option here. Fill out that group a little bit. I keep pulling up my drop-down tab on accident here. I think we're going to pick Marvin Jones here, though. I think that's the move. So, Tony Pollard, Mike McCarthy just came out, basically said, we don't need to be giving Zeke the ball 25 to 30 times a game, so we're going to give Tony Pollard some more involvement. I'll believe it when I see it, but Tony is very explosive. If something were to happen to Zeke, you've got yourself an excellent handcuff option. I'm not one of those guys that sits back here and is like, Tony Pollard, RB1 season, there are those guys out there who are like, Tony Pollard is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they'll tell you that he's a league-winning sleeper. Sure, he's a league-winning sleeper if Zeke tears his ACL and we don't see him for 9 weeks, but Zeke has never had significant injury history. Knock on wood. I need to find some wood. It's over. I guess that Zeke is all we've got is a glass table that I record on. So, yeah, you heard it here first. Zeke is screwed this fantasy season. Oh, I hope not. That'd just be awful. But nonetheless, jokes aside here, Tony Pollard is a very quality handcuff option, but he is not anything more than that when Zeke is on the field. He has very explosive ability to be an efficient rusher, and as, the RB4 on this team, I like him in that role. He should not be your RB3. He should probably be your RB5, but we went RB light here. That's kind of what happens. When you draft first overall, get yourself that Cook, that McCaffrey player, there's typically one very nice option when the board comes back to you, but if you don't want to go 3 straight running backs, you're basically conceding the fact that your group is going to be pretty thin. You can either have the choice of reaching on that third back at the top of the third round, or, again, you can take a thinner profile at that position. I chose to go with Darren Waller as my 3-1 draft choice. I could have had, DeAndre Swift. I could have had Chris Carson, but I felt it was a bit earlier for those players. So, something I wasn't too keen on doing at that spot. I like that pick of Gronk there. The computer did this. I don't like taking him and Gesicki back-to-back. That seems a bit foolish to me. Wasted draft picks. I think you'd rather just have one or the other and hope things work out, because if they don't, all tight ends are the same when you're taking flyers on them in the late rounds. You can project tight end sleepers and high upside players all you want. I look at situations, and I've spent probably 24 hours total on the tight end position for my draft guide profiles this season. There's a lot of promising situations. There's a lot of reason to be optimistic about a lot of these guys. But let's be honest here. Maybe 5 of them will actually pan out this season. Legitimately. Outside of those top 5 or 6 tight ends I listed off for you at the start of the board, there is no guarantees the rest of the way down. Dallas Goedert, supposed to be very, very good last season. Finished in the tight end 20s. He was hurt a lot. I'm not blaming these players for being injured. I'm just saying things don't typically go as planned at the tight end position. So you're best off drafting safer positions that still have that quality upside. And there's going to be so many streamer available options on your league's waiver wire unless you're drafting 25 rounds deep. So I've done those type of leagues before. Then, yes, you're picking up different tight end options. But when we've got 16 rounds here, even though this is a 12-team league, don't bother drafting more than one fancy tight end. I would love me some Russell Gage. Russell Gage shot up my rankings list this time around here on the draft guide. He absolutely soared up them. He will be featured in the sleeper section of the draft collection too. That's something I'm working on, filming an exclusive video for my must-own players and my sleeper prospects, my bust candidates as well. Those will all be individual things, accessible only to draft guide owners. Russell Gage is like the poster child of fantasy football sleepers for me this season. I've already got my list compiled. I know who those players are. I've scouted and spent a gross amount of time looking at the board, studying the ADP. I just love Russell Gage this season. I mean, the 144th overall pick could net you. I'm not going to say he's Calvin Ridley last season because he's not going to finish as wide receiver 4, but he's playing the same offensive role that Ridley played for 9 games last season. I mean, Julio was around for some bits and pieces of the year last year, so Gage is not the same talent that Calvin Ridley is. He doesn't have as elite of intangibles, but he's going to see a healthy target share this season, and there he goes. Typical me talking about a player right before he gets bounced off the board. All right, time to reassess this draft strategy. I'm just kidding. We've got plenty of options. I'm not too worried about that. Fields. It could be Fields time here. I'm glad I passed on him last round. Traquan Smith, another very, very good sleeper pick there. 2 good picks by some of the subscribers that are online right now making draft picks. Again, if you are skipping around today's video, make sure you head down in the description of today or any video here on the channel and click the free invite link to the community Discord. That's how you get in these mock drafts. That's how you join into exclusive events with me here on the channel. And you can have your picks featured here live in a video, or I guess this isn't necessarily live. This is an offline video going up at a scheduled time. But if I were to do a live stream for a mock draft, you would have the chance to pop in there, and it'll be first come, first serve. So if you're around, boom, you've got yourself a spot. So make sure to go check that out. Also subscribe if you're enjoying today's mock draft episode. That would be very helpful. Again, we're trying to make this the most interactive fantasy community out there. I want to be answering questions. I want you guys asking me a ton of stuff. We're going to be doing live weekly question and answer segments during the regular season. If you're in that Discord chat, you're going to have access to a lot of stuff. I mean, it's really easy for me to pop in there and answer a few questions quick in between stuff I've got going on in my day. I'm going to be a very, very busy person this fall, but this is a very big part of who I am and what I do. So it is now dawning on me that I have 10 seconds to make a draft pick. Justin Fields. But I want to be out here helping you guys as much as I possibly can, and had I not been rushed, maybe I would have picked Deshaun Watson. I understand why he's still going low on boards, but he is currently rising since he did report to camp. So, yes. So please get involved, subscribe to the channel here, stick around. I am here to help you guys win your 2021 fantasy leagues. That's the ultimate goal. And again, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help you guys be the best fantasy players you can be and have a dang good time while doing it this season. Win you guys some cash in those big money leagues. It's going to be an awesome season. So Cole Beasley might be my pick here. Hopefully he doesn't get bullied into retirement by his teammates and the National Football League. Yeah, if you haven't heard, Cole Beasley is not vaccinated and is one of the most public players against that vaccination. DeAndre Hopkins also made a comment about it, so I guess he's not vaccinated either. But I don't think at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not trying to get into like some heated discussion here, and there we see Chuba Hubbard go off the board. I'm not too concerned about that since I invested into, I ended up getting Leonard Fournette, and then Tony Pollard I think is a quality enough handcuff that I was fine with that. But I don't know. I think that when all of these players had to go through all that testing on a daily basis last season, that sucked. And plain and simple, I mean, the NFL is kind of your boss. So they're going to make their rules. If you want to follow them, fine. But if not, you have to get tested every day. Everyone had to do it last year. I'm glad I wasn't getting swabbed every day up my nose or however they do it. I don't know if they have the in-mouth option or whatever. But I don't know, man. Cole Beasley, you've got your choices. You can do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to live with the decision you make. And I hate to say it, but I don't think DeAndre Hopkins or Cole Beasley, and that's a lot to say. DeAndre Hopkins is a superstar, but the pushback the league was getting died down pretty dang fast because I think that these players realize in the grand scope of things, they are pretty insignificant to the monopoly of pro football that the National Football League is. So just my little dialogue there on that situation. Again, I'm not really taking one side or the other. I think that you should be able to be free to make whatever choice you want to do. But I also think that there's natural consequences for whichever choice a player chooses to make or not to make. So who knows? But Cole Beasley, welcome to the team, bro. He was one of my favorites last year. Cole Beasley was a freaking monster. PPR machine. He was my perennial flex in a league-wide flex player. I had him in every league. I was picking him up off the waiver wires, pushing his name hard in the waiver wire episodes on the channel here. I was the leader of the Cole Beasley fan wagon. This dude, the targets, he would have 10, 11 catch games with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs had 168 targets and led the league last year, but there was still enough volume for Cole Beasley to be a machine as well. So you add in the fact that Emmanuel Sanders is in town this season, you have to assume that he will play the John Brown role, but John Brown was hurt for a lot of last year. So I don't know. It's kind of give and take. Maybe Cole Beasley sees some regression this year. Gabriel Davis was productive in this offense, but he doesn't play quite the same game that Emmanuel Sanders plays. Gabriel Davis is the receiver 4 now because you've got two vets who are bumping him down the depth chart with Beasley and Sanders. But Davis is kind of a deep threat. He can score very quickly and produce a lot of points on one catch. Emmanuel Sanders is not an inefficient player. He's not going to be a volume monster per se, but he's also not going to be an elite field stretcher. He's more of a intermediate type route runner. Very, very shifty, plays his best ball out of the slot, which is kind of where Cole Beasley does his damage. So that might be a little bit concerning. But Sanders is a pretty small guy himself, so he's probably still on the board here. Unless I'm just blind. Let's check him out. Sanders. Oh, he's still available. His ADP is just a tad lower than Cole Beasley's right now. I've got them ranked back-to-back in the draft guide. Like I said, I think he has the best shot to come in here and fill that John Brown role that Gabriel Davis, we see him go there, was playing last season for this team. But, at the end of the day, I think it's going to probably have to be one or the other. I think I'll take my money with Beasley in year 2 just because of how quiet Sanders was last season with the Saints. I think that team just didn't really complement his play style that well, though. I don't know if it's quite the end of the line for my boy Emmanuel Sanders, who I've been watching for years. He's been in the league for 12 seasons now. All right, 3 picks left. So here's the chance. All right, so this is exactly what I was talking about, and I'm going to illustrate this to the best of my ability here. So 2 of my league mates here, or 2 of the Discord channel mates, because this isn't an actual league, but hey, boys, if you're watching right now, you want to hop in a league, just send an invite link. I'll be happy to join. That goes for all of you. I've joined some of the other leagues that I've been invited to throughout direct messages in the Discord channel. So if you want to hop in a league with me, I'd be down to do so, paid, free, whatever it might be. I'm in. I love fantasy football, and this isn't just something I do for the heck of it. I take this stuff very seriously, and I love doing it. So I'm always happy to play in a league. But nonetheless, this perfectly demonstrates what I was talking about earlier. So the Discord channel members have started a run here. The Washington football team, Tampa Bay. They took 2 defenses off the board. I've got the chance to answer now. If I wait, I'm going to get the bottom end of the group here. I'm going to continue this run and put pressure on the rest of these players to draft a defense. I just got my number 1 overall defense off the board. I have it as 1 Rams, 2 Washington, 3 Tampa. This is going to work out 2 ways. I just got a good defense because I didn't wait and I pulled the trigger. But that also means a team maybe around this spot, the 15-6, the 15-7, is going to have whoever their best player is on this board at this point in time could potentially fall to them if the rest of these teams follow that trend. Now, these 2 teams have already taken their defense, so maybe they don't take, well, they're not going to take a second defense here. But here, Willie Wallace, Huddy, we could see 3 teams in a row take defenses because that position has been started to be drafted. So something to keep an eye on here and just kind of showing more so what I was talking about earlier on in the video. What the heck? Let's take a flyer on Marlon Mack. I wonder what he'll look like this year coming back from an Achilles in week 1 last season. Poor guy, he was like one of the best, he was nothing special. Marlon Mack was not an explosive player. He was not a franchise running back, I'd say, but he was dang good enough to get the job done, and he just went forward every play. But then the team drafts a second-round running back in Jonathan Taylor. We're wondering when Taylor will beat him out for the job. We assumed, some of us did anyways. I was kind of the belief that JT would be slowly working his way up to that full-time job by the end of last year. But some people didn't even expect JT to take over as the starter until this season because they thought Mac would walk last year. But it kind of, you have to play both hands here. Mac tore his Achilles, which is a very, very significant injury for a running back, in a contract year. So his price on the free agent market, which probably would have been decent and netted him some nice money, maybe 4 years, $20 million, then turns into him getting the minimum offer from the Colts because they've had him around in their locker room, around in their organization to know the quality of a player he is, the type of person. So they're willing to give him a chance, but it really sucks when a contract player who has played that hard, he was a 4th-round draft pick, I believe, and just worked his way up the ranks for that team, really saw his value take a hit there. But now Jonathan Taylor has to deal with him in his backfield this season. So we might see the roles reversed, and I don't want anyone to get injured. I'd be pretty screwed, to be honest, if Jonathan Taylor gets hurt, because in my Dynasty League, my big money Dynasty League, Huddy 15's in that, I've got Akers and Jonathan Taylor, and last year I just kind of sat on some young players and put together a team that I thought could win this coming year. I'm looking like, oh, Akers, Jonathan Taylor, we're set. Like, I've got 2 RB1s here. I had Miles Sanders on my bench, and I've got a really, really nice receiving core with some young guys on there. And then Akers gets hurt, and I'm like, oh, man, this is going for the worst. Thankfully, I did have Darrell Henderson on my bench, but if something happens to JT, I don't have Mac or Nyheim Hines, and I don't really want to give up draft capital to go get those guys quite yet. So that could get really ugly if Marlon Mack has to come in this season. But so here is a rare situation. I guess it's not even so much rare, but 2 teams didn't feel the need to go out for the defenses. So there we see the Ravens go. So we've got one of them going at least, but not too much of a run has formulated here. And it is interesting to look at too, because that run, quote unquote, started on a bend. So then those 2 teams didn't have to pick. If it starts at the top of a round, you're really looking at a run's probably going to start to happen, because I drafted the 3rd player in the run per se, the 3rd defense, but then it went right back to the first 2 that started it. So there wasn't as high of an urgency from the rest of the teams because they've got back-to-back picks before we can dabble into that group again. So I've got 1 pick here to end off the draft board. Then I'll do some quick team recaps that was requested a couple videos back, and then we'll get you guys on out of here and into tomorrow's episode. Remember, subscribe to the channel and turn the bell on so you guys never miss an episode. I post videos at the top of every morning, 6 days a week, but we've got 11 videos coming out this week, so 10 more after today's episode, which you all should be looking forward to here on the channel. So I like to see that Devin Booker. We're playing in the NBA now. Devontae Booker for that Saquon Barkley relief in the early on stages of the season. And here comes the defense run. So now it's looking like I'll have my chance to capitalize on my end of the bargain here, because Willie Wallace and DWN there are going to have to take defenses. So then just 2 actual players will come off the board here. One will come off with Huddy there, but Van Jefferson, that's okay by me. I was really excited actually for Van Jefferson before they drafted Tutu Atwell and had to go out there and sign Hamstring Jackson. He's so frustrating. Deshaun Jackson literally puts up wide receiver 1 numbers some weeks, and he's not even close to that anymore. But, like, he will literally have a game where you're like, oh my, this dude still got it. And the next week he comes out and doesn't catch a pass, and he's like, ouch, my ankle, ouch, my hamstring, ouch, my back. And you're like, dude, how old are you? Like, can you stay together, please, for me? Just 1 week. It's a journey with him on your team, I'll tell you that. Might look at a Ramondre Stevenson here with this last pick. It would be a deep sleeper, but at the running back spot, I could use some help here. Don't need it, but I could go for that spot in this group. I love that Bryan Edwards pick. John Gruden's kind of a talker, kind of a loudmouth, but he did compare Bryan Edwards at training camp the other day to Terrell Owens. So, not saying he's going to be Terrell Owens. I think John Gruden might look like kind of a dork for saying that and might get some heat for that. But Bryan Edwards is a big man, and he is kind of scary, and he is very fast. You never know. He might be a sleeper. I've got him. I've got an interesting profile on him for SizzleFantasy.com's draft guide collection this season. So one more shameless plug before today's video is over. You should go check that out, as always, and help support the content we make here on the channel. But for the last pick in today's mock, I'll go back to the old reliable. I haven't picked him in probably 5 or 6 mocks here. But Ramondre Stevenson, the big bruiser, LeGarrette Blount 2.0 for that Pats offense, he might just get in there and be a force on the goal line. So quick run through my team here. Russ Wilson, CMC, J.K. Dobbins at the quarterback and 2 running back positions. The top 2 wideouts are lined with Amari Cooper and Tyler Lockett, along with my tight end 2 overall this season, Darren Waller. Cortland Sutton and Leonard Fournette are the top flex options, but I would prefer over Fournette if possible. Brandon Cooks or Marvin Jones step up into that role here. My number 1 defense this season, the Los Angeles Rams in that category, and then Tony Pollard, Justin Fields, Cole Beasley, and Marlon Mack, along with Ramondre Stevenson to cap off the bench here. Let's take a look at the other user teams in today's mock. We had a lot of guys finish on auto pick, but that is fine because they were with us for the majority of the episode. Dalvin Cook, Montgomery, and Swift, a very strong 3-headed monster at the running back position here. With Thielen, Chase, Samuel, and Judy, I'm not a big fan of Thielen. I would have rather seen them take Amari Cooper, to be quite honest, from me. But that wasn't the case. I think they did a very good job addressing Darnell Mooney and Traquan Smith in the later stages, though, 2 very elite sleeper options. Matt Stafford is an under-the-radar quarterback play that could turn into a very, very quality QB1. They stole my handcuff for Christian McCaffrey, so that is a big-time upside play for them if something happens there. And then for the 1-3 team, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, and Myles Gaskin. That's pretty dang good for your top 3 backs with Robbie Anderson, Justin Jefferson, Russell Gage, Michael Pittman, and Jarvis Landry at the wide receiver positions. There's some really steady faces in that group. I love Jefferson and Anderson a lot. You add in Russell Gage to that mix. Those are 3 pretty good options. Jarvis Landry is consistent, doesn't have a very high ceiling, but he can certainly get something done as well. Washington's defense, Adam Troutman, a really high upside sleeper. Like what I'm seeing there. I talked about this team earlier. Great top 2 running back draft choices. I love the way they address the receiver position as well. And if we want to talk about that Javonte Williams pick, you're giving yourself some elite upside down the stretch of this coming fantasy season. He's going to take over that backfield at some point or another for Melvin Gordon. Here, we talked about this as well. Great pick here in Zeke. Not a fan of the CEH selection, but wow, we really loaded out that receiver room and got ourselves some good upside there. Devontae Smith, all the way in the middle of the 7th. Antonio Brown, Gallup, Elijah Moore, all really nice upside. Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's a pretty dang good pick as well. Aaron Rodgers, you capitalized on, I think he was, QB3 or QB4 last season. 48 touchdown passes. I mean, it won't happen again, but you look at the rest of this team, you've got some elite depth at that wide receiver spot. Barkley and Gibson, I love that top 2 running back combo. Michael Carter, again, in the 8th round. pretty good pick here for a half PPR league. Lamar Jackson, you get yourself a tier 1 quarterback in my book. George Kittle, a top 3 tight end. I do prefer Darren Waller, but I picked him 5 spots sooner. The wide receiver room, I mean, I'm not a big OBJ fan, and I don't get too excited about Chris Godwin, but Curtis Samuel, Corey Davis, and Mecole Hardman are very high upside picks and very quality selections down there. And Raheem Mostert to round out that group. You could, at the running back spot, you could flip him for some trade bait and get yourself some nice upside there. We had these teams end on the auto draft, so I'll skip over them for assessing them in today's video. But Nick Chubb, Travis Kelce, I like that start a lot. Travis Kelce is actually my number 11 overall player on the draft board this season. And then you get a wide receiver 1 in the 3rd round with Terry McLaurin. That is pretty quality as well. Mike Evans, again, a guy who's right on the fringe of being a top 12 fantasy receiver. And then doubling down at tight end. So maybe you want to flip one of those for another player on the board here. But you've got yourself two top 5 fantasy tight ends with Kelce and Andrews there. Mike Davis, Rojo, 2 solid backs. Maybe you want to flip Andrews for another running back, get yourself some more help there. But Will Fuller, once he comes back off suspension, that'll be a pretty good pick. And then maybe you could also upgrade quarterback, but Trevor Lawrence is going to be passing the ball a heck of a lot for the Jags this season as they try and stay in games. And then Pittsburgh there, it's a quality defensive option as well. So really good draft today. Again, we only had 1 spot available here, that 1.7 pick. So make sure you stick around here on the channel. Subscribe if you're new. Check out those draft guide collections. Join the community Discord. We want you involved with everything going on here on the channel and getting you the best advice, content, access to fantasy information as possible this season. So thank you all so much for watching today's video. I will see you all next time. Peace out.